Hi, I'm Gideon King, the founder of NovaMind software, and today I have a very interesting story about how Stephen Fieber's company used NovaMind to outbid 312 other competitors to get funding for a project from the National Lottery for a large regeneration project in Heartlands in the UK.
It was obvious to me from the beginning that whilst they had a huge raft of aspirations, they kind of had a kitchen sink approach to it. It badly needed structuring. So the first thing that I did with them was to run a workshop in October 2006, and I used NovaMind to deconstruct the project, take it apart into its components.
So when you received the requirements document, you said that they were basically a bit of a mess. What was your first specific step that you took when you received those documents?
Well, usually what I do is I just start with the MindMap title, and then I randomly read through all the documents, and as I'm doing that I just start to build the mind map.
So you're basically drawing out the keywords from the requirements document?
Yeah, and then the branches that come out from the keywords. So I'm always looking for, you know, a tree-like structure in the mind map. That's the way I use them, and then might leave that for a day or two and go back to it and then reorganize it. And so what I'm doing all the time is I'm moving from other people's documents or ideas or thoughts into a graphical form. And the great thing about the graphical form is that I can then easily reorganize it, and I can see that. So it gives me what Richard Gregory, who developed a lot of work on brain and perception, called the circuit between hand, eye and brain. It gives me that.
Okay. So once you'd worked through those requirements and broken it out into MindMap form, grabbing all the keywords and then organizing it, what did you do next with the requirements and developing them?
Okay, well the next thing was to look at the big lottery's structure, and they put out two documents which were actually contradictory. So we had by that time architects, engineers, all of the team together, and so I ran a development workshop with them, and during that workshop I reorganized the lottery requirements into a mind map, which was actually 12 chapters of the proposal document.
Now, I know that you used NovaMind when you were examining the requirements and breaking them down by keywords and understanding the overall direction, and also used brainstorming to come up with extensions of the requirements and built those into mind maps as well to fit the wider needs of the community. But I understand that you also used it when you were cross-checking the requirements to make sure that all the things that you'd put into the project plan actually were covering all the aspects of the requirements in the original documents. Can you tell us about that?
When you output it to the outline form, then that's the cross-check process, really. We tell people how many words they've got to write, how many pages, and then in this case we made them all use InDesign.
Right.
So they all wrote into a template. So when we put the document together, theoretically, we could just assemble all the chapters.
Right. So you had that all mind mapped out with all the different sections of the document and responsibilities?
Yeah, yeah.
So how did that work out in practice?
It worked pretty well. I mean, the mind mapping, outlining, structuring process worked well. The only thing that didn't work particularly well was that people discovered that in InDesign they could do lots of different things, and they changed things, which is just, you know, human nature.
You produced this document, submitted it, and they went away and did their assessment of all the proposals, and then you were one of only three.
We were the only one in England. There was one in Northern Ireland, one in Scotland.
Oh, right, okay.
So we're in the 1% club.
Right, yes, so the top 1% of companies that actually submitted proposals.
Yeah, I mean,
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it must have been. I mean, I don't know, do I? Because I didn't see the others, but it must have been good.
Right, absolutely. So now that the project has received this funding, what do the people in Poole and the Heartlands area think about it?
Oh, they're delighted. I mean, it's the biggest investment, £30 million, the total investment that they've. It's the biggest capital project that the council has ever managed.
Right.
Up to that time, they'd only managed projects up to 4 million.
Right, so that's going to make a big difference to the local community, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and it's the guy who was the project manager in the local authority. He's 28. He's called Scott.
Right.
You know, it's going to make his career.
Wow, absolutely.
Why mind mapping is good for me is you need absolute clarity of the understructure. You know, what a sculpture would call the armature, the thing that generates the form of the project. So you've got to have a core, then you can generate the form. If you don't, what the mistake people make is they don't think clearly enough in the beginning about the core of it. I've always been interested in ways of thinking. I knew about Tony Bazan's work and Edward de Bono, you know, for years, and I started looking a few years back for some software to use in thinking about developing projects, creativity, and so on. I found NovaMind completely by accident on the web, but I liked the product, and I particularly liked the relationship that I was able to develop with the company. It's not every company that replies to my emails, but NovaMind did, and clearly it was a company that wanted to develop because it kept releasing updates, fixing problems. They were clearly in a mindset of let's make this better, let's make this the best. And I started to use it in thinking about the projects that we do, moving always from a linear, structured relationship of elements to a graphical form that's easy to manipulate and move around, and then back to a structured form again. And just for my way of thinking, that's particularly useful. So I've used it on a load of projects, actually. When we get a proposal in, I often deconstruct the project using a mind map, but I also use it for monthly planning. If I've got, you know, a lot of stuff going on, if you look back on the file system, you'll see a NovaMind for every month over the past 2 years. So it's a powerful tool in a number of ways: productivity, thinking, creativity. It's been fantastic.
For further information, you can contact Stephen Fieber at stephenfieber.com or email them at contactus@stephenfieber.com. For further information about NovaMind Express, NovaMind Pro and NovaMind Platinum, please visit novamind.com, or you can email me directly, gideon@novamind.com. This is Gideon King from NovaMind Software, wishing you all the best with your mind mapping.